Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. Peter brought along a toy, and I was expressing that I was not sure how to tie this into today's lesson like we've been doing object lessons. Peter just wanted me to tell you that he got it for Christmas. So Peter is very thankful for his new toy that he got for Christmas. So we're in the first Sunday in January in the year of 2024, and we are backing up to where we were in 2 Kings. We left off in 2 Kings chapter 4 talking about Elisha and how he had been kind to the Shunammite woman who had been kind to him and restoring the lady's son to life when he had passed away. Well, in chapter 5, we learn about a man named Naaman. The first 2 verses in the chapter kind of introduce us to the characters in today's story. So if we look at verse 1, it says, "Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper." Boys and girls, that's right. Yeah, Peter. If you remember in Bible times, having leprosy was very serious. It meant you couldn't interact with other people. You had to be separated from your family. There wasn't a cure for it. And it was very painful and miserable. Well, boys and girls, Naaman is this mighty man, and yet he has leprosy. It talked about the king of Syria. We have the king of Syria and the king of Israel, our 2 kings that are going to come up in today's story. But he works for the king of Syria, and he is a powerful man for the king of Syria. In verse 2, we're introduced to another character, technically 2, but one we're going to talk more about. "And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife." So the nation of Syria has captured the nation of Israel, and they've gone in and they've taken captives and brought them back to their country. Well, one of them was a little girl, a little maid, who works in Naaman's house, and it helps Naaman's wife. But she is there, and she knows that Naaman is sick. The little maid tells her mistress in verse 3, she says, "Oh, if Naaman," you dropped it, sorry, Peter. "If Naaman were back in Israel, if he were with the prophet, he could be healed." Well, one of the servants hears this and goes in and tells Naaman, "Hey, the maid knows somebody back in Israel who could heal you." So Naaman goes to the king of Syria. So the word keeps traveling. He goes to the king, and we will look at that interaction in verse number 5. "And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 pieces of gold and 10 changes of raiment." He says, "Hey, if somebody can heal you, go. I will even send a letter with you to the king of Israel saying who you are, and let's take some treasures to pay for this." Well, he gives him the letter. He goes to see the king. Well, Naaman goes to the king of Israel, and the king's like, what am I going to do? I don't have any powers. I can't heal him. And he stresses. And the Bible says he rents his clothes. He tears his clothes. He's so worried because he's like, I can't heal him. This is our enemy. And if I send him back and I can't heal him, what's going to happen to me? And he's just stressing out. Yeah, he should have prayed. But Elisha in verse 8 hears about it. "And it was so when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Elisha says, "Hey, don't worry about it. Just send him here." So Naaman goes to the house of Elisha. They knock on the door. Elisha doesn't actually come out himself. Elisha sends one of his servants to the door. And so Naaman's like, okay, well, the servant tells him that he should go 7 times, go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River. And Naaman gets super upset. He's like, what? The Jordan River is filthy. It's nasty. It's disgusting. We have better rivers back in Syria. And Elisha didn't even come see me. I'm an important guy. I'm a powerful guy. Why didn't he come see me? And he's upset and he wants to go back to the land of Syria. Well, his servants are like, are you sure we should do that, Naaman? Shouldn't we do it? Verse 13 says, and his servants came near and spake unto him and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee go do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then when he saith to thee, wash and be clean? Verse 14, then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again like upon the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Boys and girls, God had used Elisha to tell Naaman what to do. Naaman had to obey. He had to go down to the Jordan River. One of those rivers in Syria wouldn't have done it because he wouldn't have been obeying God, because God said the Jordan River. He goes down to the Jordan River and he does it. He dips in 7 times. When he comes up the 7th time, because it had to be complete obedience, he was clean. He was spotless. Those blemishes of the leprosy, thanks, Peter, of the leprosy had been washed away. The Bible says his skin was like that of a child and he was clean. Boys and girls, he'd been healed. God did the miracle, but Naaman also had to obey and he had to humble himself. Boys and girls, that was kind of humiliating to have to go in that nasty river and dip himself. Verse 15, and he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him, and he said, behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now, therefore, I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. He goes back to Elisha, and Elisha does come out and talk to him, and he's like, wow, your God is amazing. There is no other God but your God. Your God is incredible. And he offers Elisha gifts. He's like, let me give you gifts for this. And Elisha says, no, I can't take these gifts because it's God who did the miracle, not Elisha. So he refuses the gifts. Boys and girls, it took Naaman to be humble. He had to be humble, not proud. And he had to obey. And it wasn't just a little bit of obedience. He couldn't just dip 6 times. He couldn't go back to a river in Syria. It had to be the Jordan River, and it had to be 7 times because he had to obey completely. Boys and girls, throughout this week, as you start out this new year, will you obey completely or just a little bit? Boys and girls, I hope you'll obey completely because that's what God tells us to do in his word. Look forward to seeing you next week.